want to thank you for joining us at Cowboy Junction Church today. As you hear this message, we pray that your faith will grow and you will be both encouraged and challenged. We would really love it too if you would subscribe, rate, review, and share this online. You can also help us reach others by partnering with us financially. You can easily give a one-time gift or set up a recurring gift at cowboyjunctionchurch.com/give. We hope you enjoy the message today.
I watch that breakthrough roll in now 4 times, and I get chicken skin every time I see it. No, I do. Look at my arms right now. And it just gets me excited about this next series that we're going to do because we're going to be talking about the breakthrough that Pastor Andy prophesied over Cowboy Junction. And what does it look like? Everybody wants the dam to break, but the question that he asked us was, what's behind the dam? And if the dam broke, what prayers, what sowing, what belief, what faith have we filled that reservoir with so that when the dam does break, what's going to come out of it? And that's where we're going. And this is kind of cool because we've got this message and the next message. Next week's our last message in this series, What Does a Good Life Look Like? So for everybody here at Cowboy Junction, that this is your first time to Cowboy Junction, you're kind of figuring some stuff out. Let me explain this. This series is us studying the books of wisdoms and taking a look at the ancient teachings that have showed us the God way of doing the right thing. Now this question, let me just be very clear. This is a very offensive question, especially in today's day and age. And the reason why this question can be so offensive is because out in the world we live in, if you ask 12 people what a good life looks like, you might get 12 different answers. Well, I think it's this, and I think it's this, and I think a good life is this, and I think a good life is this. And you might have someone who says, I think a good life is this, and then the flip side is somebody completely looking at it in a completely opposite opinion. And then now all of a sudden the tension is started. And because of the tension of this is what I think a good life looks like, all of a sudden the controversy takes place. And so very few people even know that you can ask this question. In fact, even think about it. When was the last time you were in a conversation when somebody felt the freedom to ask this? And it's because there's so many opinions out there of what a good life looks like. Okay? So why do we get to ask this question in church? And this is kind of the interesting thing. If you're in the room and you don't even believe in God, you're here accidentally, you're here just because somebody invited you, I am just really thrilled, really excited that you are here. So you might say, well, why do you get to ask this question? And the reason we want to search out this question is because the ancient scriptures, the books of wisdom, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job, really focus on answering the questions of doing something that actually brings something great into our life, okay? And there's these little proverbs found in Proverbs that are these little one-liners full of negatives and positives. Negatives and positives. And a fool looks like this, but a wise man looks like this. And it's meant to get you uncomfortable. And so we've been covering all kinds of different topics, okay? And let me just say, today's message is a little bit different than any of the other topics that we have covered. When you walked in today, you might have noticed the sign that was outside that said, hey, parental warning, PG-13, okay? We just want you to know that today's message has some parental content in it that unless you want to have that conversation with your kids about what we're going to talk about, you should probably go now. And it's not a big deal. It's like just get up, go out, sit in the lobby. And if at any point you're like, I think we're going to leave today, just come back next week. It's going to be great, okay? And now CG is so much fun on stuff like this, okay? Because I'll text her and I say we should probably put the parental guidance sign out. And so she comes into my office 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay, she comes in and she goes, hey, on the parental guidance, what if we have somebody, this is totally CG right here, what if we have somebody that just might say that, how do we know? How do we know if our kids should sit in on this message? How should we know? Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. And she goes, and I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, what if we have somebody go, I don't know whether I should bring my kids in or not. And I go, okay, tell them this. Do you trust Ty? And she goes, oh, that's good. That's really good. Yes, CG. What else? What if they don't trust you? I go, okay. It's a great question. It's a great question. If they don't trust me, then they should probably say, hey, listen, we'll listen to it on the podcast, or we'll listen from outside and then leave from there. But I just want to let everybody know it's not too late. You can get up now and go. But if you trust me, your kids might have questions later, and that's okay. You just send them my way. And I've got friends who can talk to them, and we'll get them broke in really good, okay? But listen, it will be a great day. We're going to talk about sex. Okay? And it's because Proverbs is full of wisdom about sex. Now, if you're in the room and you're like, man, if I knew we were going to talk about this, I wouldn't have come. No. Trust me, you want to be here. If you came to really search out the heart of God, okay, there isn't a better subject that we're not going to, there's not going to be any condemnation today. There's going to be thought. There's going to be investigating Scripture. We're going to be asking, what does a good life look like when it comes to sex? And I have a little disclaimer I'm going to throw out after we take a little bit at Scripture and what does Proverbs say, because I'm fully aware of something you may not think that I'm aware of, and we're going to get to that next, okay? But I want to look at, what does Proverbs say? What does Proverbs say about sex? Okay, well, let's just jump right in. It really cuts to the point. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 32. This is the kind of stuff you find in the ancient scriptures, okay? And it says this: he who commits adultery lacks sense, okay? And he who does it destroys himself. And the reason why it's so harsh is because it's wanting to get your attention. It's talking to people who are on a slippery slope to disaster, okay? And Proverbs and the author of Proverbs, and the way that God used the author of Proverbs was to just be that jolt before you get to no man's land. And this is a no man's land scripture trying to get your attention and say, hey, just about that abrupt. If you commit adultery, which you know adultery is sleeping with another man's wife or another wife's husband, but it doesn't just stop there. If you're loose with sex, if you don't take sex seriously, the greatest treasures you will ever experience in life, okay? And that seems kind of like extreme, but go with me here. Some of the greatest treasures you will ever experience in life come from the gift of sex that God gives us. I mean, think about it. Our kids are a blessing to us. You're going to get to be a grandparent someday. And some of you are experiencing the blessings of being a grandparent. Some of you, let me just tell you, some of the coolest stories I've ever heard. There's a really cool couple. I hope I can tell you the story someday, the whole story. They were going through the darkest time of their entire life. Okay, I won't go into details. You just paint the picture of the darkest, where did this come from moment in their life. And they'd gone through the day, they'd gone through all the decision making, and finally they were at home by themselves. And the wife turned to her husband and said, you know, this usually causes families to be destroyed. And he goes, yeah. I mean, usually it's just a matter of time before this affects our marriage. And he goes, yeah. And she goes, I want to make a decision right now that our marriage is going to stay strong through this. And he goes, I was just thinking the same thing. We got to make a decision right now. Our marriage stays strong. And this may blow your mind. Sex was one of those things that every night they could come home, and it was the most intimate, purest type of sex they had ever experienced in their life, to where they needed each other's presence so deeply. And it was the healing in this hurtful time that sex provided for them. That is beautiful. It's the bonding of a husband and wife. It's really, to describe it. It's just cool. I mean, it's just cool. It's not the cheap stuff we talked about in our locker rooms. You're like, man, we were such idiots. We thought we knew what we were talking about, and we were just a bunch of idiots. Oh my gosh. And it's just cool. And then on top of that, let me just throw this in there. It's fun. and so with that, let's look at what it isn't. It's not adulterous, because anybody that looks at it like that is self-seeking and self-gratifying, and you just lack sense. You missed the God picture. And it says, and he who does it this way destroys himself. And so with saying that, if sex provides them the coolest treasures you ever have in your life, then sex can also cause some of the greatest regrets you've ever had in your entire life. Wish I'd have got that one back. Wish I'd have done that one differently. Gosh, that was dumb. Ooh. Come on, honey, we can't go down that aisle because you see who's down the aisle. You have to go a different direction. And it's this moment of, you see, Proverbs is trying to get your attention. Okay, so what else does it say? Let's look it up. Proverbs says in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 15, drink water from your own cistern. Okay, let me just call a timeout. You're fixing to read one of the most poetic proverbs about sex, but some of you are going to look at that and go, seriously? Okay, and this is actually about sex, okay? And this is what Proverbs says, drink water from your own cistern. It doesn't say sister. Okay? So just making sure we're on the same page here. It's not sister. It's cistern, okay? Flowing from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad? Streams of water in the streets. Let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Okay, stop. This is poetic. This is also where a lot of people tease and kind of make fun of Proverbs and go, seriously? This is the poet's way of saying, listen, don't let your water of your stream that is supposed to bring life and rejuvenation and joy as it comes up, don't let it flow into your neighbor's property. Don't let it go into their house. Don't just spread it all over the neighborhood. This is a private affair. Celebrate it. What would you do with a spring that was on your property? You would protect it. You'd keep it safe. You'd keep it clean. You would make it to where it was enjoyable. It was treasured. Okay? Flowing from water from your own well. Should your spring be scattered abroad? Don't do it like this. But it goes on. It says, let your fountain be blessed. Let your fountain be blessed. Now remember, we're talking about sex. It's saying, listen, let sex be the blessing that it's supposed to be in your life. You're at different seasons in your life. Okay? And in every season, there's this place where this fountain is supposed to bring a blessing. There's a time to say no. There's a time to say yes. There's a season for all things. Let whatever season you're in, let sex be a blessing in your life, whether you're saying no in the season you're in or yes. Okay? And rejoice in the wife of your youth. A lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. It doesn't say there, hey, you should really not like sex with your wife. It's saying here, your pastor should stand up in front of you from the pulpit in the microphone, recording it on the computer, and tell you it is supposed to be fun. Your pastor is supposed to turn to you and go, me and your pastor's wife, we like it. Okay, and you shouldn't be embarrassed by that. There should be discretion. I don't want to get rude. But there are people right now, like, can he say that? Shut up. He's fixing to use the word breasts. And it's this moment that I want you to realize that we don't flaunt it out in the streets and we don't parade ourselves. And you have no business knowing what we're doing, and we don't have any business knowing what you're doing. But if we can all stand here and go, God's got a purpose for it, and if we treat it like the spring it's supposed to be, your pastor should stand before you and say, hey, listen, let your wife be like the wife of your youth. You can be 80 years old, and I think you should still chase her around the house. A lovely deer. I mean, you should sit there and go, dang, my girl's got it going on. Girls, you should look at your husband and go, he's got something going on. But I tell you what, I didn't marry him for his looks. I married him because that man just does it for me. When he brings me those flowers, he knows the coffee I like. Man, when he walks around with those tidy whities, it just does something for me. Okay, let her breast fill you at all times with, what does it say? Delight. With delight. I hope for the single people in the room go, man, y'all married people are fun. I run into married people all the time. It just looks like the moment you get married, that you're supposed to not like each other anymore. It's like, why are you nagging me? I don't nagging me. And it's like, is that what this looks like? It looks like y'all still chase each other around the house. Did you just pinch her on the butt? Get out of here. Shut up. Y'all are so cute. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? Yeah. Be intoxicated. That means be filled to the point where you're just fun to be around, intoxicated, always in her love. Can I say some things real quick? Yeah. Tonight, we're going to talk about some things that in today's day and age, no one talks about sex like this. Think about it for a minute. When we talk about sex in today's day and age, it wasn't the giggling fun that we just had. It wasn't your pastor talking to you about chasing the pastor's wife around the house. And I still think my wife's the coolest looking thing ever. And she struggles with her body. And I say, babe, knock it off. Man, if a man talked to you the way you talk to you, I'd punch him in the nose. I'm going to defend you, even if I have to defend you about yourself. I hope you see that I get intoxicated with my wife. And the way that we talk about sex in the world we live in is either this version of sex it was never supposed to be, or we don't talk about it at all. But it's never the fun, graceful dough type that we just covered. So we're going to do that tonight. We're going to talk about it the way that God intended it to talk about. I want to explain to you the ancient wisdom keys of what he says to be careful with, and the things that we have to look at that are the really cool stuff that I want to cast vision to our single people today, and that the married people need to hear. And the people in the rooms, I don't know how to talk to my friends about what God says about sex. It's okay. We're just trying to look at what a good life looks like in the issue of sex. But here is the part that I told you I would come to, and I want to be very clear on something I know that maybe you don't think I know. And here's one of the things that I know that maybe you don't think I know, and it's that you already got your mind made up on this subject. Okay? I know that. I know there's people in the room that you already have your mind made up in what you think we can do, what you're going to do, what you've done, and there's no amount of preaching that will ever change. And that's not one of them. I'm not going to turn into a preacher tonight. So why would we still touch on this if no one's going to change their ideas? Because I want you to understand that what we've done is to show you that there's a choice. And there's a God way of doing it. And there's this chance, knowing full well that you've probably already set up your mind about what you're going to do. Well, that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't keep me from saying, hey, these scriptures are older than us. And they've been around for thousands of years. And it's been the eternal struggle in so many people that have walked the earth. What do you do with sex? Okay? Now, I served on a board one time for the Hobbs school system to help figure out how to help in the issue of teen pregnancy. So I was shocked they asked me. They called me and said, would you sit on the board, try to figure out how do we help teen pregnancy? And so this is how I came to the conclusion that you've already made up your mind on this. Because I was the innocent little guy that walked in and was like, I know what I'm going to suggest, celibacy. Okay? Let's just, you know what would help us not get pregnant? If we didn't have sex. That would be awesome. And so I walked in and I looked across the room at people that went to churches and different stuff, and I raised my hand and yes, Pastor Bean, what's your suggestion? Have we thought about introducing a celibacy message in the school system? And does anybody else think that's a good idea? And no one else in the room raised their hand. No one else. But wait. Here's the thing, is that I was shocked. Maybe you're shocked. But later, the lady who was leading it, this is the lady who has come down from Houston to help us figure out how we're going to pass out condoms in the school. Okay, super smart, super intelligent, wonderful lady. Thoroughly enjoyed her. We had our meeting, and we took a lunch break, and she goes, Pastor Ty, I need you to come with me. I'm like, great. Here we go. I'm in trouble now. And so we go out, and she goes, you're a Christian, aren't you? And I said, how do you know? And she goes, oh, trust me. I know you're a Christian. She goes, I am too. wait, you're not either, because you want to hand out condoms in school. And she started telling me, she goes, I want to make a difference in my world. She goes, one of the things I want you to know is I got involved in this many, 3 decades ago to try to get the celibacy message in the school. I was constantly hitting a brick wall because it's not an option. It's not even an option for 90% of the people. Our statistics showed, the mathematics showed 90% of the people don't even see it as an option, which means that the 10% that would even consider it is wrapped up of 9% that's probably going to shift over this way and 1% who is even going to do it. And she goes, so I had to make a decision. Am I here to preach a message no one's going to do? Or am I here to help my community, even if it's me handing out condoms in high school? I thought, okay, I'm here to learn something. So I realized some of you aren't interested in this message. But I get 15 more minutes. And what if? What if we take a look at what Proverbs says in Proverbs chapter 7? This is King Solomon telling us a story. It starts off by him saying, dear friends, do what I tell you. Treasure my careful instructions. Do what I say and you will live. My teaching is as precious as your eyesight. Guard it. He's saying follow wisdom. If you want to find out what a good life looks like, listen to what I have to say, because I have seen a lot in my lifetime. Some of the things I have to say is when it is out, write it on the back of your hands, etch it on the chambers of your heart. Talk to wisdom as to a sister. Treat insight as your companion. They'll be with you to fend off the temptress, that smooth-talking, honey-tongued seductress. And so this is King Solomon saying, this is what a good life looks like. And he covers it in every chapter, all the way up to chapter 7. And on chapter 7, he says, let's talk about sex. And now you see chapter 7 shift. And King Solomon does something so cool. He says, I want to tell you a story. And he's about to tell you a story. Some theologians believe that it's actually a parable. Okay? It's his way of making a point. Some people believe that it's an actual story of something that he saw, something he wrote down and saw that nobody in the story knows that he was watching the whole time. And some theologians believe it actually could have been Solomon. Okay? And the story goes like this. As I stood in the windows of my house, looking out through the shutters, watching the mindless crowd strolling by. And isn't that interesting? Especially when it comes to sex. We can be so mindless. He says, I watched the mindless who didn't have a deep thought, never took into consideration, never asked, where is this path going to lead me, walking around as I stood up on the top. And then he says, I spotted a young man who knew everything and was the smartest guy in the whole world. Is that what it says? No. And all the young men and all the young ladies that are in the room, you're not just, Solomon says, I spotted a young man who was without any sense. Arriving at the corner of the street where she lived, then turning up the path to her house, it was dusk. And the evening coming on, the darkness thickening into night. And just then a woman met him. She'd been lying in wait for him, dressed to seduce him. Brazen and brash, she was restless and roaming, never at home. Walking the streets, loitering in the mall, hanging out at every corner in town. She threw her arms around him and kissed him, boldly took his arm and said, I've got all the makings for a feast. Today I made my offerings, my vows are all paid, and so now I've come to find you, big boy, hoping to catch sight of your face, and here you are. And what's interesting about this, I have to pause, is that we think that the seductress is going to come woo you in, and she's going to come from all the places except church. Except all of these signs point that she just came from church, asked for forgiveness, made the offering, has a brand new start, and she goes to look for you. Interesting. I've spread fresh, clean sheets on my bed, colorful, imported linens. My bed is aromatic with spices and exotic fragrances. Come, let's make love all night. Spend the night in ecstatic lovemaking. Y'all didn't know this was in the Bible, huh? My husband's not home. Dun, dun, dun. He's away on business, and he won't go back for a month. Soon she has him eating out of her hand, bewitched by her honeycomb speech. And then you see the shift again take place. And he poetically begins to explain the heart of what chapter 7 says. Before you know it, he's trotting behind her like a calf led to the butcher shop, like a stag lured into ambush and then shot with an arrow, like a bird flying into a net, not knowing that its flying life is over. So, friends, listen to me. Take these words of mine most seriously. Don't fool around with a woman like that. Don't fool around with anyone like that. Don't become someone like that. And don't even stroll through her neighborhood. Countless victims come under her spell. She's the death of many a poor man. She runs a halfway house to hell and fits you out with a shroud and a coffin. Now, let me tell you, you could be in this room, not even a believer, but still there's wisdom in this to where you can say, I don't think you have to be a believer to get that. But there could be some still issues that you take from out there and bring them in here, and you would go, okay. But our culture, everybody say culture. Our culture would say, hey, listen, what about this myth? Sex is only physical. And so our culture hears the story, and like, that's a really cool story, and it makes kind of good sense. And I guess every one of us should start thinking about who we're sleeping with, and we should be smart. I get that out of Proverbs chapter 7. Okay, so why don't we take that momentum and just talk about why would culture now pull you back after you've just heard wisdom, and we continue to do it differently than how God intended for sex to be. And this is one of the myths in our culture, that sex is only physical. It's just two buddies helping each other out. I mean, honestly, seriously. Seriously. It's hard to watch a TV show right now without just this casual sex. It's hard to watch a movie. And can you all imagine watching movies right now with the teenage boys? It's like, we're going to watch this greatest movie ever. It's going to be awesome. Okay, we're going to fast forward. Okay, now we pick up where we left off, and we fast forward, and we pick up where we left off. And it's just hard not. My mom used to say, no, we're not watching that movie. You can't watch a movie now without having the fast forward button there, you know? And it's become this thing about sometimes it's just so casual, even in the physical side of it. I was thinking about this. And if I turn to you, even if you believe this, it's just physical. It's just physical. It's no different than two friends. It's no different than, I don't know, anything else that's just normal in our society. Sex is anything but normal. And sex is physical, but it's so much more. And I want to show you some things I've thought about. If sex is just physical, and the rules to it being physical are as long as nobody gets hurt and as long as nobody gets pregnant, then it's okay. Here's the problem I have. When a child gets sexually molested, I know this goes off deep quick, but go with me here. This is the things I deal with. When a kid gets sexually molested, do you turn to that kid and treat him the same way as if he just got beat up in the parking lot? You know, and if a kid got beat up in the parking lot, or if a kid got beat up on the playground, you'd go grab him, you'd pick him up, you'd look at him, you'd dust him off, and you go, dude, I got beat up too when I was little. And you check his scars, and he's bleeding a little bit, but he's going to be fine. And you turn to him, and you go, hey, dude, you just got to shake it off. He's got to shake it off. And if a kid got beat up, that would probably be the advice you'd give him. But if a kid got sexually molested, would you give him the same advice? Dude, you just got to shake it off. Happened to me when I was little too. You okay? All right, go get them. And you wouldn't. Because it's not just physical. Okay? If a woman got raped, and all the ladies who rallied around her, if she got beat up by her husband, would you rescue her, get her to a new home, set her up, and then she basically would let her wounds heal. She would turn to her kids and say, we're going to redo, we're going to change life, and you go do it differently. It's horrible. I would never want a woman to be physically hurt. But if she was raped, would you just turn to her and say, hey, you got to move on? You would want to, but it's different. Because rape isn't just physical. Because sex isn't just physical. Do y'all know that some of the people's biggest regrets in life have been sexual? Because it wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. It was emotional. And it was physical. And listen, this is important for us to talk about, because how do we talk to our friends about this? And how do you see this in the world we live in? And you're constantly being bombarded. Guys, it's just physical. It's just consensual. But down in your heart, you're like, no, I see it differently. So we're going to wrap this up, okay? And we're talking about what does a great life look like. And I want to show us in what does Paul say about it, okay? And Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, some really cool stuff. You may want to write this down. You may want to take a look at it. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm just here to kind of put some stuff in front of you. And maybe, just maybe, you will start to see that you can live life with fewer regrets. You can live life with a greater understanding. And you can start being able to make a decision. What if I did it God's way? And I'm going to go to verse 18, but we're going to go to verse 16. We're going to go to verse 19, verse 20. But I want to start here, okay? Right here it says, flee sexual immorality. Now, if you want to know what is sexual immorality, you can go to chapter 7. In chapter 7, the whole first part talks about, hey, sex is meant for a husband and wife. Sex is meant for a couple that is married. You can look at it. You can read it. This is God's plan, okay? I know you may go, well, that's old-fashioned. Okay, call it what you want. God does have a plan for it, okay? Paul goes on and says there's a season where it's good to withheld, and it's when in your single years. And Paul goes on about the value of your single years. And guys, let me just tell you, I don't think we preach enough about how cool it is to be single. And all the married people are like, dude, don't miss out on going and doing everything God wants you to do when you're single. Because when I was single, I missed out on so much because all I could think about was being married. And Paul addresses that. He says, flee from sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his whole body. And so Paul's saying right here, it's not just an outside thing. It's an inside thing as well. Paul says some really cool stuff here, and he goes on. He goes, we're going to go backwards. Now we're going to go look at verse 16. This is right before what we just read. It says, or do you not know that he who is joined to a harlot is one body with her? This word is his severe way of saying who you sleep with, you're spiritually connected to. Who you sleep with, it's more than physical. Who you sleep with will actually affect your marriage years after. It's not light. This is knowing that he who is joined to a harlot is of one body with her. For the two, he says, shall become one flesh. And that's a little heavy, but it makes you look at this as, what are you wanting in the marriage that you're heading towards? Have you thought about where you're going? So now let's jump forward, verse 19. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? This is really important that we take a look at this and realize this is deeper than maybe you thought it was. Okay? And I can't cover this whole thing in the short amount of time we've been here, but this all of a sudden, let me tell you what it's like. Maybe for some of you, the first time ever in your life, someone told you, hang on. God made sex. God has a plan for sex. It's a really good plan. You should consider it. And you should start maybe considering it today. First time that's ever happened in your life was right here. Cool. That's what we're here for. And this is a whole lot deeper than you realize it is. This is a spiritual thing. This is a physical thing. There's no doubt about it. But this is also a emotional thing. And it's a mental thing. And some of the greatest treasures you'll ever have in your life will come by making this a very important choice-building wisdom key in your life. But some of the greatest regrets you'll ever have in your life is because you didn't take this key, wisdom key, spiritual choice-making ability seriously. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap this up by just saying a few things. You may be here and say, Ty, it's great that you think this, but I'm going to think my way. Okay, before you go, I'm going to throw one more thing in there. Sex is not just a matter of personal preference. Sex is about God's divine design. And I really want you to think about that. When I was growing up, I remember the guys being so insecure when it came to sex. Yeah. And I remember guys saying stupid stuff like, okay, dude, the reason why you got to practice sex is because you want to be really good at it by the time you get married. I mean, the last thing you want to, you got to practice sex to be great at sex. You're doing your wife a favor. Yeah, no joke. Guys are stupid. Ladies, guys are stupid. But I thought I'd throw this out there because as I'm 47 years old now, okay? And I wish I could go back to those locker rooms. And if you would say, well, I don't want to look stupid on my wedding night. Let me just talk. That's exactly what you want to look like on your wedding night. For all the single guys in the room, all the single ladies, don't buy into these things that get in our head. Like, well, I don't want to look stupid for my husband. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to walk in and go, baby, I got this? You just sit back. I've done it many times before. Well, no, you don't want to do that. Okay, you know why I had to say that? I hope we laugh. I hope you laugh at that. I hope you're laughing driving down the road saying, I got to hear that again. That's the funniest thing I ever heard. You know why I want you to hear it? Because there are people that need to realize sex is innocent. And that's what makes it so strong. And on your wedding night, for all the single people listening to me, if he has no clue what he's doing, and you have no clue what you're doing, all the girls in the room, you're doing it right. Because I'm going to promise you this, you'll figure it out. And that's a part of the fun. Okay? Now what I don't want you to do is think of me thinking Ty said that. Ty said, no, forget about me. Forget about me. Totally forget about me. But I do want you to know, it's supposed to be awkward. It's supposed to be, I don't know what to do. And that is the really, really, really cool part about sex. A few questions and we're going to go home. For all the single people in the room, I have a question about where you're going. And we all want to marry that godly person. We all want to marry that girl we can take home to mom. We all want to marry that guy we can take home to dad. But here's my question I have for you. Are you the person you're looking for is looking for? Are you the person you're looking for is looking for? And I think that's one of the most sobering questions we can ever ask, because we can wish, we can hope, we can want, but it goes back to innocent. Are you the person you're looking for is looking for? And remember a minute ago I said there's no condemnation in tonight's message. Maybe you're here today and you go, I did it wrong. Okay, cool. You're going to be able to turn to your spouse one day and say, I want you to know something. I didn't do it right. But there was a day I was sitting there talking to my pastor, and he was funny, and I'm totally trying to get him out of my head right now. And I remember the day that I decided to draw a line in the sand and turn away from my past and to start doing things God's way. And I can tell you that I didn't do it right, but from every sense that I followed Jesus, I've continually just been able to take step after step. And there were mess ups, there were flip ups, there were things that just I had to break out of the old. But I can truly tell you today that that was my life BC, before Christ. And my life in Christ is the guy stands before you who is the awkward, weird, totally nervous right now guy who knew that I needed to be the person that you were looking for if I was going to be looking for you. Okay? If you'd like to talk more about that, I'd love for you to come to my office and we talk about that. Here's another question. Are you willing to start determining the story that you want to tell? What story do you want to tell about your life? What story do you want to tell your kids? Okay, guys, listen. Dad was like this, and I got a pass. Okay. If that's the story you want to tell, but what if your story was, listen, the only dad you need to know about is the dad that when he decided to follow Jesus, started following Jesus, and broke the chains of how everybody else did life, and we started doing life differently. God's way. Third question, okay? What if we started giving up something now for something better later? If we did this, it is an investment for your future. Giving up something now for something better later is an investment for your future, which means that we might have to say no to something now that's actually going to be for the better, that will actually have a major influence on the future. Band, can y'all come up? And the last and final thing is, for everybody in the room, that you may be married. Okay, listen closely. You may be married and you totally are like, hey, my years are gone. I still need you. You may not have ever been told this message before, but I still need you. For all the folks that I don't know your story, but I need more and more people to be rooting on the message that we spoke tonight about what does a good life look like when it comes to sex. And this is where we get to, even if I don't do it this way, even if I didn't do it this way, but I wish I had done it this way, can you start believing that it can be done this way? Can you start cheering this on? Let me tell you why this is such a big deal, and the band's going to help us do something, okay? Just be patient with me. One of the most awkward moments of me being a pastor was standing before a group of people, and when I was 27 years old, married Heather Bean, and she was the first woman who I'd ever been with in my entire life. You're looking at the 27-year-old virgin, okay? And it took a lot of work. It took a lot of It took a lot of, this is a priority. I got to do it God's way. I got to give 100 no's for one God yes. I choose God's path. I choose God's path, okay? And seriously, I turned to my wife. This was my decision. It was my decision. I told that at church one time, and I had a man come to me that was in our church, and he came into my office, and he goes, okay, I call bull crap. Seriously, just like that. And I said, what? And he goes, ain't no way a guy can do that in today's day and age. I said, I did it. And he goes, you're a liar. I said, are you serious? He said, I'm telling you, it can't be done. And I said, dude, I think I'd have known. I didn't do it. And he goes, it can't be done. And they quit our church. You can't make stuff like this up. Seriously. And what do? What you do is you stand before the rest of the congregation and you go, guys, I need you to start believing that it can be. I need you to start telling your kids, hey, me and mom didn't do it this way, but we see that God's plan is way better than our plan, and it can be done. And we didn't do it like this, but we wish we'd have known we could do it like that. So this is my plea as a pastor. Even if you didn't do it this way, but you wish you had it done it this way, can you start believing it can be done this way? Okay, so stand to your feet. How do we do tonight? Okay. If you're in this room, and maybe it's just like, I need to reprogram the way that I think stuff. The band's going to play a song. And this song's been specifically picked out because we're believing God for healing. Maybe a different change of thought. Let this song kind of talk to you about where God wants to take you from here. Let's sing it.